Hi, good morning. Robert Medlin here. I wanted to kind of just discuss a subject that affects us all in to one degree or another, and that's the uh, the tendency to try to look at others negatively, criticize them, or judge them for things they might be doing, the way they're acting, or whatever. And it's really just a lack of faith when we do that, because we understand that Jesus has paid for all of our sins. He's not counting anybody's sins against him anymore. So that's according to 2 Corinthians 5. So God's not counting anybody's sins against them. Jesus has already took the judgment and paid for the sin. So what happens when people get into sinful behavior or behavior that is not right? It's because the enemy is influencing them and oppressing them or deceiving them, and so what happens is when we jump in there as in the role of an accuser or the judge, then we're just taking the role of the devil. We're just echoing his words because he's the accuser of the brethren. And so whenever we see something that's not right, the safest thing for us to do as Christians is to pray about it, and to pray that the Lord would set that person free from any deception, from any demonic influences that are affecting them. And so when you pray and ask Jesus to do that, you're really taking the role of a priest, and you're just getting on Jesus' side, because that's what Jesus has given us the authority to do, is to pray about things that aren't going right. It's so easy to get critical. There's so many things going on around us. It's so easy to get critical of other people. Even in marriage, it's so easy for husbands and wives to just get kind of a critical or judgmental attitude toward the other one. They just, they just start, look at that, look at what they're doing. What they're doing is not right, and just to develop kind of and it just that'll just develop into it'll affect the way you communicate. It'll affect the way that it'll just end up being a root of bitterness. You'll just end up being end up destroying your marriage and hurting yourself. So we have to really catch that, because the instant we start judging or criticizing others means that we aren't seeing that Jesus paid for them on the cross. We aren't seeing that. We're not seeing that we do things that are probably worse. Jesus said, take the log out of your own eye before you try to help somebody get the speck out of their eye. And so we want to be righteous in the way that we relate to others, because Jesus has been so good to us. Our sins are completely paid for. Jesus paid for them on the cross. He took the judgment, descended into hell for us. Jesus has already bought us and paid for us. We're already seated with him in heaven. So we shouldn't act like we're not. We shouldn't act like that for some reason that we have a better behavior than other people, or better attitudes than other people. Anything that's going on that's not right, it just means that the devil has influence. He has no right to hurt anyone, especially he has no right to harm a Christian. We have authority to trample all over him, but we can yield ourselves and yield our minds and start thinking, like he thinks. And so it'll end up hurting your relationships. It'll end up making you a bitter person. It'll end up really exposing the same things in you. The Lord is so kind to us. We're forgiven. We're totally innocent in His sight. But to enable us to see things clearly, sometimes the Lord just permits the very thing you're criticizing the other person for to be exposed in your own life, that or something worse. And so we just have to be careful. Jesus said, "Judge not, or lest you be judged." With the same measure you use, it'll be measured to you. So God doesn't do that to judge us eternally. He does that to help us, to get us out of this judgmental attitude, so we can have grace, so we can pray and do our job as priests. And so God doesn't want us to be judgmental. If you find yourself being critical, it's so easy to have a critical thought, to have critical attitudes and towards other people. And just as soon as you catch yourself doing that, just say, "Lord, forgive me for that. Forgive me for that, Lord." I just ask you to bless that person and cause that person to just be filled with your Spirit, filled with the knowledge of your will, that they would be under your control and under your leadership, Lord, that they would be able to escape the clutches of the devil that's got them in this behavior that's not right. And so if you'll just do that and just pray instead of criticize, pray instead of judge, then that's taking our role. If you don't do it, then you're really just you're just sitting over there with the devil, just echoing what he's saying, which we don't want to do. It's so easy to fall into that. Jesus had to rebuke Peter one time. Peter had a thought that wasn't of God, and right after he had the revelation that Jesus was the Son of God. Jesus said, "Flesh and blood hadn't revealed this to you, Peter, but my Father who is in heaven revealed that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of God." And so just a few minutes or a little bit of time after Jesus had commended Peter from hearing from God, flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you. That was revealed to you by my Father in heaven. Just a few moments after that, Jesus is saying he's going to go to Jerusalem and be crucified, after 3 days be raised from the dead. And Peter just rises up and said, "That'll never happen to you." Well, what happened is he just caught the devil's thoughts. He caught fleshly thoughts, and so he just uttered what was in his mind. That'll never happen to you. And so Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan. You don't have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." So God doesn't want us to yield to those satanic thoughts. Another time, James and John were going ahead of Jesus to prepare for meetings that Jesus was going to come into the villages and cities to preach and to minister there. And they went to one city or one village, and the people wouldn't receive them. They rejected them. And so James and John came back and said, "Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven?" And Jesus had to tell them, "You don't know what spirit you're of." So moment to moment, we've got to just be careful not to fall under the influence of demonic forces, demonic thought patterns, so one of the things that the devil will try to tempt you to do is to be critical or judgmental of somebody, and to try to hurt your relationship, to try to cause you to fall out of grace and lose your consciousness that Jesus paid for their sins just like he paid for yours. And so that's what the devil wants you to do, is get into the realm of that kind of thinking. But the easiest way to do that is just catch yourself. If you catch yourself having a bad attitude towards anybody, judgmental attitude, and then just say, "Lord, forgive me. Lord, I just ask that you set that person free from every demonic influence. I pray that you'd bless that person's life and cause their life to come under your kingdom, under your influence, under your blessing, Lord, that they would be blessed in their lives." And so that's our role as Christians, is not to judge, not to criticize, but just pray for people. Just pray that Jesus would bless them. Pray that Jesus would set them free from whatever the devil's trying to do to harm them. The devil does try to distract Christians to keep them away from being effective in the Lord. So we just pray that those people would be set free from that demonic influence, that the Lord would send angels to help them, whatever is needed, and that they'd be given revelation to get them out of the trap they're in. So another thing that's really important is that there is a role of trying to help people to get them out of whatever pit they're in. If they're in some kind of sin or in some kind of bondage, to try to help them. And the scriptures tell us to be careful even when we're doing that. That we're dealing with demonic powers. All of a sudden you can get a bad attitude, the next thing you're falling under the same temptation. So you just have to be careful. Realize that we're dealing with demonic powers, that Jesus paid for everything. So on the cross, by his blood, he's given us the authority to stand against and resist these demonic powers. And so that's our job. And the way we do it, the primary way we do that when we see people doing things that aren't right, is just to pray and ask Jesus to bless them, ask Jesus to help them, to set them free, to turn their hearts, to bless their lives. And that's our role as priests. So that's pleasing to the Lord. Well, I know this will be a blessing to you. Watch this in your marriage. Watch this in your attitude towards your boss. Watch this in your attitude towards other people that you read about in the news. Watch this in your attitude towards your children, or to other people. And just watch that attitude. Just the instant you catch yourself being critical, just say, "Hey, it's time to pray." So God bless you and have an awesome day.